them comfortable. It's our anxiety, our racial anxiety, being amongst a group of people who you know don't value you and don't want you there. It often triggers subconsciously in the mind of a Negro that plantation slave mentality and that plantation slave behavior that says we have to keep the master comfortable at all costs.
But in that statement, you're saying, so you don't think that the other races of people, when they're around the other races of people, think the same thing or tend to do the same type of, or have the same type of behavior?
To some extent, yes, I've seen it, but not to the extent we do it.
Right.
Not to the extent we do it. Because when we walk into a room, one thing is absolutely clear. Nobody else in the room really desires us to be there. Most of us know we are tokens. We know that when we walk in there. You're only here so we don't look like the races that we are. You are a token. And every other group in America is united against our best interests. So even though you might be in a room with one white person, one Asian, one Arab, one Latino, one East Indian, one Native American, one European Jew, they are all collectively opposed to black people. So multiculturalism is a sham and a farce because nobody's interested in inclusion for black people. If they were interested in inclusion for black people, you wouldn't see as many homeless. You wouldn't see as many incarcerated. You wouldn't see as many unemployed. Someone would have to show me the inclusion for black people. Even when you look at affirmative action, which was supposed to be the inclusionary policy, it benefited homosexuals, physically white handicapped, and white women more than it benefited black people. Although on paper, the Civil Rights Bill, the affirmative action policies claim to be inclusionary programs, they never sought to include black people, only to give you the illusion of inclusion.
So how about when they use the term people of color? When they
people of color is a
distraction.
distractionary term. So what people of color says is we don't want to empower blacks, but we can't come out and say that. We have to look like we care. So what we're going to do is we're going to lump all non-white people in this generic term of people of color. This way, it looks like we're talking about black people. We're serving black people, but we're really talking about all non-whites who are other than black. So for example, let's say Jackson, Mississippi. Hypothetically, you look at the city and you say, or the state, let's look at the state of Mississippi. What percentage of state contracts went to black people? The governor may say, we gave 20% of our contracts to minorities or people of color. I didn't ask you how many contracts you gave to minorities, and I didn't ask you how many contracts you gave to people of color. I asked you how many contracts you gave to black people. Because guess what? If we allow ourselves to be clumped in with all non-whites as people of color, they can give 20% of the contracts to people of color, and not a single black get one.
And
you see that?
Say they did what they were supposed to
so
do.
the definitions that we use that allow us to be multiculturalized in with other anti-black, non-white people will ultimately be used to disenfranchise us. But psychologically, they get away with it because we as a race are not comfortable standing alone. That's why whenever we have a march or protest, if you notice, most of the time when we speak, we're including other groups in who have nothing to do with it. Take the George Floyd protest. Everybody who spoke of the issues of Latinos, spoke of the issues of homosexuals, spoke of the issues of brown and yellow and poor white.
Never got back to black.
Never came back to black. So how can you make the government prioritize your issues as black people when you yourself won't even prioritize your issues as black people?
Now, multicultural to me is a spectrum, okay? So when you said that, you focused on one situation. So when you say multiculturalism is not the way for black people, what if, you love who you love? You always
that ain't got nothing to do with it. We're talking about political, economic empowerment.
Okay. But it's still on that spectrum. You see what I'm saying?
But if we're going to be multicultural, then let's multiculturalize the money. Let's multiculturalize the banks. Let's multiculturalize the land. Let's multiculturalize the assets. Let's multiculturalize the political power. When we have conversations about multiculturalism, it tends to be limited to social integration. Can we go and sit at the park together? Can I go sleep with a snow bunny? You understand? Can my child get enrolled at a white private school?
That's right.
We're not talking about that. You understand me?
Gotcha.
Charitable inclusion. We're talking about meaningful economic and political empowerment for blacks. If America is as multicultural as she claims to be, and we are 12 to 17% of the population, why don't we own 12 to 17% of the wealth?
Yes.
You understand me?
I got you.
For me, multiculturalism is about the politics and the economics. I could care less about the social.
Okay.
I have no problem with white people who don't want to live with black people. No problem at all. Okay. I'm dealing with assets, resources, privileges.
Now, here's with that question. Whose job is it to let us